Okay. Hello, Year 8. It's Miss Pearce and Miss O'Dowd, who are going to give you some book recommendations for the summer. It will be really good if you spend the 6-week period reading at least one of your favourite texts or one that we're about to suggest. Some of the texts that we're going to be putting forward to you today contain quite a lot of the contemporary issues in our society surrounding diversity, surrounding race and discrimination. So it would be a really good idea for you to kind of have a little bit more exposure to some of the issues that are out there, and to make a conscious effort to have that empathy with these situations and to kind of care about what's going on. So without any further ado, Miss Pearce, would you like to introduce your first recommendation?
Okay, so my first recommendation is a book called The Hate You Give, and it is by Angie Thomas. Now, this is a particularly topical one because it is linked to the Black Lives Matter movement. So it's set in America, and it's from the perspective of a 16-year-old girl, and her friend who was unarmed, was shot by the police. So obviously very relevant to what's been going on in the news recently. And the story is kind of about her struggles dealing with what happened, and also kind of her fight for justice after the event had happened as well. Mm-hmm. Obviously, it's quite a deep topic as well, but I think it's just one that's very important to know about. Should also preface by saying, like, there's swearing in it as well. Obviously there's difficult topics, so perhaps talk to your parents about that one before, but it's definitely one that I'd recommend if you're interested in what's going on in the world at the moment.
Yeah, and it's also had a film adaptation which came out, I think it was last year, was it? Which might be something as well that interests you, but I would suggest after having read it, because I think if you watch the film first, you always get the idea of the characters in your head. And how the actors do it rather than your own imagination. So yeah, if that's one that appeals to you, read the book first. I guess on the same sort of theme, one of my favourites when I was growing up was Noughts and Crosses by Mallory Blackman, and there are quite a lot of books as part of the series now, but it essentially follows the lives of Callum and Seffi, who begin their relationship in quite a difficult setting. So it's sort of it's set in the future, but the idea that Black people in society are those that are the most privileged and the most powerful, and the white people are therefore marginalised and kind of made to be the other in society. And it's all about kind of the conflict that arises between the two groups. And therefore the relationship between Seffi and Callum takes lots of difficult twists and turns because of the fact that Seffi is dating a white boy from kind of a terrorist background. It's a really great story. Mallory Blackman is a fantastic writer. She's using themes that are prevalent in Romeo and Juliet as well by Shakespeare. And there's also the BBC adaptation, which I have watched recently, and I think it does a good take on it. I have my own views about the acting, but that's a personal thing. But no, it's really good. So once again, I would suggest reading the book first, then watching after. But yeah, once again, a caveat to that, it does contain some adult themes, but very interesting.
Okay, the next one I'd recommend is called The Poet X, and that's by Elizabeth Azevedo. And this is written in the form of poetry, and it's in the form of slam poetry. So she's a real poet. She has performances of her poetry on YouTube, which you can look up as well. But this is basically a story about a young girl who's from New York, and she discovers slam poetry, and it helps her to kind of understand her own identity and stand up for herself a bit. So she's from Dominican heritage, and she has kind of struggles with meeting her parents' expectations because of religion. And it's just about how writing this poetry and performing it manages to help change her life and build her confidence. So it's a really nice one. It's, again, on a similar theme. But yeah, definitely recommend looking up her on YouTube as well.
Yeah, slam poetry. I remember at the last school I was working at, we had a slam poet come and give a performance, and it was just amazing how he was able to just on the spur of the moment just come up with like an amazing piece of poetry. I just don't know how he did it, and the students were kind of giving suggestions of what he could put in it, like, I don't know, they're showing like potatoes or the sky, and he managed to somehow weave in all these words. It was really good. Anyway, I've got another similar text. So if you like The Hate You Give, from kind of a male perspective this time, is a text called Ghost Boys, which is by Jewel Parker Rhodes. And Ghost Boys, the title there comes from the fact that 12-year-old boy, Jerome, is actually shot by a police officer because he's holding a toy gun, but it's mistaken for being a real gun and him posing a real threat. So consequently he dies, but it's all about his journey as a ghost, kind of looking on the devastation that his death brought to the community and his family. And along the way, he meets other ghosts as they kind of discuss what's been going on, and the daughter of the police officer involved in this incident. So a really interesting text that's shedding light again on some really important issues and how it is also affecting people of your own age, really. Yeah, love from you, Miss Pearce.
So my next one is by an author that I really like called Philip Pullman, and it's a book called The Book of Dust. Now he wrote his Dark Materials trilogy, the Northern Lights ones, which was also a TV series recently. But it's basically like a prequel. It's about sort of a mysterious substance called dust, which is like linked to our consciousness and our understanding of the world, and it's about a boy who becomes a spy to kind of discover what this is. So if you're more interested in sort of fantasy, it features like parallel universes, and it's a bit more of an adventure fantasy style story, if that is something that you would be more interested in.
And off the back of that, really, I'd just like to give you a bit of insight into the Carnegie Award, which is a prestigious award each year which selects some great texts by up-and-coming authors or existing authors that have a lot of they're sort of like already have a good fan base anyway. And the winner this year is a text called Lark, which is by the writer Anthony McGowan, I believe that is. And what's also great about this author is that he always chooses to write his texts in a dyslexic format. So the reading on the page, makes it much easier. And he's also written Rook as well, but he's more interested in looking at sort of difficult family dramas. So this text follows the lives of Nikki and Kenny, and they are they're young siblings, and they're kind of navigating themselves through the world, and they're just told that their mum is going to be paying them a visit, so they decide to kind of go on a walk, escape the realities of what might be ahead, but it takes a bit of a turn as the weather changes and they get caught in a blizzard, and it's all about how they survive through that and decided that they become permanently changed from this journey.
Okay, my next recommendation is Refugee Boy, which is by Benjamin Zephaniah, who's also a really good author. I definitely recommend that you look up some of his books as well. So this story is about a boy from Ethiopia, and he's called Alum, and he goes on a holiday to London with his father, but one day he wakes up and he finds out that his father is gone. And then he finds out that his father has decided to leave him in the UK so that he can have a better life. So the story is about how he fends for himself in Britain with his new life. So again, quite topical. It's obviously about refugee. So definitely one I'd recommend you have a look into, or another of Benjamin Zephaniah's books, because they're all really good.
What Miss Pearce and I are going to do now, we're going to give a bit of a reading from one of our suggested books for you to approach this summer, because we appreciate that you haven't actually had a teacher read it to you for quite a long time, and that's something that can be quite comforting in the classroom. The book that I'm going to read the opening of is called Bone Sparrow, and again, like Refugee Boy, it does take inspiration from the refugee crisis. And if you've read or have watched The Boy in the Striped Pajamas, it kind of takes a little bit of a mapping from that story, really, because you have the idea that the main child or the main character has never known life beyond this sort of refugee camp, and kind of dreams about life over the fence, and then becomes good friends with a girl called Jimmy on the other side of the fence. And it's all about how they form a really good friendship and also navigate through some really difficult times. So I'm just going to read you the opening of that now. If you have a Kindle, which I got recently, which I'm always playing about with, it's quite fun. It's only 99p on there, but you can also get it from any other places. So, right, this is the opening then. Sometimes at night, the dirt outside turns into a beautiful ocean, as red as the sun and as deep as the sky. I lie on my bed, Queenie's feet pushing against my cheek, and listen to the waves lapping at the tent. Queenie says I'm stupid saying that kind of stuff, but it's true. She just doesn't see it, that's all. Our Ma says that there are some people in this world who can see all the hidden bits and pieces of the universe blown in on the north wind and scattered about in the shadows. Queenie, she never tries to look in the shadows. She doesn't even squint. Ma sees, though. She can hear the ocean outside too. Do you hear it, Nee? I whisper, my fingers feeling for her smile in the dark. In the morning, the ground's still wet and foamy from where those waves washed up. I sit and trace the hundreds of animals that have swum all the way up to the tent, their faces pushing against the flaps, trying to get a look at us inside on our beds. Queenie says they aren't real beds, but just old army cots and even older army blankets. Queenie says that a real bed is made with springs and cushions and feathers, and that real blankets don't itch. I don't think those animals would know the difference or really care much either. This morning, I found a shell washed up right along with those animals. I breathed in its smell, all hot and salty fish, at the very bottom of the ocean. And even though Queenie doesn't believe and grunted about when I was ever going to grow up, and I could please quit bothering her all the goddamn time, she still gave me her last bit of paper and said that I could borrow her pen so I could write the words in black at the top of the page. The night sea with creatures. I drew a picture as best I could with no colours, and paper only cost me my soap, and I'll steal that back from her later anyway. Sisters shouldn't charge their own brothers for paper. I snug up with Ma, my legs curled up in hers, but careful not to wake her because today is one of her tired days, and looked through all the pictures in my box. I'll need to find a new box soon. The rats have eaten most of one side, and what's left is wet and mouldy, even after I left it out in the sun to dry. There are some pictures down the bottom that are headed with Ma's writing from way back, but before I could write on my own. I like Ma's writing more. When she writes, it's like the words seep out to the page already perfect. I push my fingers over Ma's letters, breathing them in like the smells from my shell. Tomorrow, when she's better, I'll show Ma my new picture and the shell and tell her again about the night sea and its treasures. I'll tell her every little bit and listen to her laugh and watch her smile. When I untangle my legs and whisper that it's just about breakfast time, and does she want to come and eat, I see that her eyes open a bit and the smiles start on her lips. Just a little longer, Nee, she says, in her English that never sounds right. I'm not hungry much, my love. Okay, I'll leave it there. So hopefully that might interest you.
Sounds very good. So the one that I'm going to read is linked to what we set you before. So this is I Am Malala, which it's obviously non-fiction. It's a true story. It's definitely one worth finding out about. So it's about a girl from Pakistan, and the Taliban took over where she was from and wanted to prevent girls from having an education. And Malala decided to stand up for that. She wrote a diary, and because of that, she was shot by the Taliban. And then after that, she came to the UK and she came to Birmingham. And this book is kind of about her life in Birmingham as a teenager. But now she's gone on to speak at the UN, and she has gone to Oxford University, and she has won the Nobel Peace Prize as well. So I'm just going to read to you the opening from that. So it's nonfiction, it's autobiography, telling her story. So the day my world changed. I come from a country which was created at midnight. When I almost died, it was just after midday. 1 year ago, I left my home for school and never returned. I was shot by a Taliban bullet and was flown out of Pakistan unconscious. Some people say I will never return home, but I believe firmly in my heart that I will. To be torn from the country that you love is not something to wish on anyone. Now, every morning when I open my eyes, I long to see my old room full of my things, my clothes all over the floor, and my school prizes on the shelves. Instead, I'm in a country which is 5 hours behind my beloved homeland, Pakistan, and my home in the Swat Valley. But my country is centuries behind this one. Here there is any convenience you can imagine. Water is running from every tap, hot or cold as you wish. Lights at the flick of a switch, day and night. No need for oil lamps, ovens to cook on that don't need anyone to go and fetch gas cylinders from the bazaar. Here, everything is so modern, one can even find food ready cooked in packets. When I stand in front of my window and look out, I see tall buildings, long roads full of vehicles moving in orderly lines, neat green hedges and lawns, and tidy pavements to walk on. I close my eyes and for a moment I'm back in my valley. The high snow-topped mountains, green waving fields and fresh blue rivers, and my heart smiles when it looks at the people of Swat. My mind transports me back to my school, and there I am reunited with my friends and teachers. I meet my best friend Monica and we sit together, talking and joking as if I had never left. Then I remember I am in Birmingham, England. There we go.
Yeah, it's such a great book. I remember reading it and you just feel so inspired by her story, don't you? She, despite her being so young and achieving so much and going through so much, I think she's a real sort of icon for the next generation, definitely. And it also made me think when you were reading that, when she's talking about being nostalgic about school and actually how we all feel in that situation now and how we took it for granted about, seeing, the staff, the students every day, and kind of how that makes us feel as well.
Yeah, definitely.
From our community. So hopefully there's a lot to kind of get you intrigued by and interested in there. And we'd love to hear your recommendations as well over the summer. We love hearing recommendations from you as well. So make a list and tell us in September. And I just would like to say personally, thank you for your hard work this term. And don't forget to make sure you read.
Yes, definitely. Lots of reading.
Yeah, it's just, and it can, these 6 weeks ahead might feel actually for the first time a bit of a long summer, with the restrictions in place. So reading is a really good way to escape our lives and take us somewhere else and learn more things as well. So hopefully you'll find some of those interesting. Well, thanks for that, Miss Pearce, and hope you enjoy reading lots of texts over the summer. I will. And I'll see you soon. Okay, bye-bye.